One day, Bega noticed a rather well-dressed Tibetan riding past the camp. He recorded the event in his diary. Deciphering a person's racial heritage was Bega's speciality. He'd been trained to do this by measuring people. Skull shape and facial features were thought by racial anthropologists to be particularly important. They separated what they saw as the superior Aryan race from the inferior races. Schaefer set his team to work on their varied scientific research. Collecting data for his scientific survey, and also for Himmler's quest for European traits he believed would racially link the German people to the Atlantean superrace. Sikkim became a place of great interest to Bega.
There are many people in northern India who are descended from Tibetans.
Racial anthropologists measured racial identity and status in the shape of the skeleton, and in particular, the skull. The cephalic index was the ratio between the breadth and depth of the head. A long, narrow Teutonic head indicated North European ancestry.
He would measure the ratio between your forehead and your nose, the distance between your eyebrows, and all sorts of very intricate measurements.
But measurements of the short, dark-skinned, black-haired peoples of Sikkim would struggle to find evidence for Himmler's fantasy of the superhuman, blonde, blue-eyed conquerors of Tibet. If they waited much longer, they risked being interned by the British as enemy aliens. The expedition was running out of time. Even the ebullient Schaefer was becoming increasingly anxious about British intentions and began to fear arrest and detention in India. Schaefer, in desperation, was even considering sneaking over the border. If he did, he risked more damaging anti-Nazi headlines and an international incident. But if he didn't, he'd face Himmler's fury. It was a slim hope, and all Schaefer could do was wait. As the summer of 1938 slipped into autumn, Schaefer remained isolated on the India-Tibet border. Then, after 5 months of waiting, a letter from Lhasa.
To the German Herr Dr. Schaefer.
The elation was indescribable. All 5 German scientists were invited by the Tibetan ruling council to visit Lhasa for 2 weeks. Bega wrote that he and the others were also being warned they were in danger.
We sat around the fireplace and discussed it. Suddenly we realized a letter and transmission from Berlin had the same message. My wife had been hinting too.
The war, they were told, would start after the summer. That was only weeks away. It was time to go home to Germany. It seems Himmler had asked the wrong guys. He'd certainly asked the wrong question. Even racial anthropologist Bruno Bega had found the Atlantis Nordic idea hard to swallow.
Bega was trying to find out what kind of racial mixture there was in Tibet.
Bruno Bega said that when they were gathered around the campfire in northern India or Tibet, they would reminisce about some of Himmler's stranger views and laugh about them.
But these men, as SS scientists, were supporting Nazi ideology, working with a man whose crimes were beyond imagining.
Here were fine young men, great scientists, you could call them, or young Germans at their best. It showed them opening up the world, or restoring the evidence. The expedition was an extraordinary achievement.